Welcome back to the old KOHI Garden Spot. Master Gardener Darryl Boom here with Chip Bubl out of the OSU County Extension Service right here in Columbia County. Chip, let's continue on with this list of handy things for the gardener in your life. And your first one, you talk about a Q-knot reusable cable ties, and I use those for a lot of things, not only garden usage, but also when we go away for a week or so, we'll use those to tie the doors on our cabinets securely in case there's a slight tremor or a little quake.
Okay.
So things don't fall out. We do the same thing down in Mexico when we leave there for the day. So, they're basically cable tie wraps that are not the kind that ratchet in and you can't, then you're done with them, but the kind that are removable. They're very, very handy.
Yeah,
So,
I think they are too, in all sorts of ways, not just the garden, for sure.
Okay, so carry on, my friend.
Okay, well, another thing, a lot of us have never gotten around to really putting in an organized drip irrigation system, and so we use lots of hoses, or may use lots of hoses, and you can buy manual or electric water timers, and they can run one faucet or two faucets, or two hoses, from one faucet, and I think they're very useful, and they do save some time, and they avoid the problem of forgetting that you have it turned on overnight, those kinds of things. So that's very, very helpful. And then there is a lot of innovation going on right now with sprinklers that can put a small amount of, not necessarily a small amount, but can put water in with a certain flow rate in certain kinds of spaces or patterns. And so anyway, I'll just say there's a lot of interesting sprinklers out there. A lot of things are changing, and so those are worth looking at anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to?
Yeah. You're talking about some good gadgets. The water timer, we will go out and set a hose and set the timer on the microwave and beep, it goes off and around, doing that back and forth. I think that's a great idea. I'm getting ideas for Christmas presents for my wife, by the way.
Okay.
Let's carry on now. Tool sharpener, Corona Quick Tool Sharpener. This is good if you're the type of person who would like to sharpen your own tools. I mentioned our Falco pruners that we bought. We don't sharpen them ourselves. We take really good care of them, but we do have them sharpened. And if you're looking for a good, easy way of doing that yourself, these are pocket-sized tools, and they're just great for pruners and also shears and the long trimming braids. So that's a good idea.
Yeah. No, I think they're great.
Yeah.
Floating row covers are something that we've been encouraging gardeners to use for some time. They're very useful in the springtime to get plants off to a better start, hold a little more warmth right around the newly transplanted materials with the seeds coming up, and then used during the summer potentially for insect control on some plants. So anyway, if you look around, you can find them for sale. We usually have them available here at the Extension office in February and March, and we're going to look into ordering shortly. So that may be something that you could use for a birthday or something like that. But we'll have some information in the newsletter about floating row covers and if they become available, and that would be a cheaper way to get them. They're very cheap. And then there is this.
I like this next one, yes.
Yeah, this is an interesting little knife. It's called a hori knife, which I think means weed or something like that. But anyway, it's a transplanting knife or a weeding knife that's part trowel and part knife. And it is an excellent tool. Those people that have them really enjoy them and find lots of different uses for them. It's a little bit like you can find some garden trowels that have a serrated edge on one side, and so that's kind of like it, but it's not as good as one of these hori knives. And so there are excellent sources for them. I think you could find them in Portland, and definitely you could find them online. It's also good for dispatching slugs. In other words, the knife side is makes one slug into two, which they don't like being into. Anyway, yes.
Yeah, that's how you'd mentioned when we were talking about this before we went on air. That may be a good present for my wife. So I'll have to look into it.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great weeding tool for sure.
The next item here is the folding pruning saws. which are really, really handy, and we have one and use it a lot. And I would just say one caveat that, boy, they are sharp. And
they are.
Yeah, and that's this. Well, also you had mentioned a good pair of leather gloves, and if you're going to use a folding pruning saw, you make sure you got a good pair of gloves on, because you can be having your hand on a branch and a finger gets a little bit out of whack there. Yeah. So, but they're great. They're very, very sharp, and they're very, very quick and easy to use. So that's a good one. And this next one, Chip.
And, well, let me say something about these folding pruning saws. They're really good for backpackers or campers.
Oh, yeah, right.
And so they are not just for pruning, but they really are useful if you're traveling out to the backcountry and maybe gonna have a little campfire or something like that. They're very, very useful. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, this next item that may be useful, I don't think I'd be wearing one of these, but it's the old LED headlamp.
Well, LED headlamps are useful for gardening. They're useful in a variety of circumstances. So you may want to find out why your plants are disappearing, and that might involve going out there and looking to see if you have slugs at night. And if you were out there actually just doing some weeding, a person could potentially weed at 10 o'clock at night on a warm summer night with these LED headlamps.
There you go.
Again, warn your neighbors of what's going on outside. Right. And then if you're one of those that puts off going underneath the house because it's sort of a pain, looking for carpenter ant evidence under your house.
Right.
The headlamp makes it a lot easier than carrying that flashlight around with you. So anyway, it's a useful tool, and I think has more uses. I think people will find more uses for it than they can imagine.
And getting here to the end, Chip, as time is flying by, a good insect, mushroom, or weed ID book, an identification book. Any ideas on that, or how?
Well, people could call me, but there's a book called Northwest Weeds that I think is excellent for about $15. It's Northwest Weeds, and I think it's a great book. Mushrooms. There's a guy, and his name now, David Aurora, and there's a big one and a small one. The small one is a good little field guide. It's by David Aurora. And then insects, there's an Insects of the Pacific Northwest. They're excellent little books. So if anyone has any questions, just call me here at the Extension office and I can get you some exact titles.
Okay, Chip. Well, wow, quite a list. Pretty impressive. We hope our listeners have got some good ideas on it. Just quickly in closing, we want to remind our listeners to support our local food bank and with local efforts to help those in need. And also, we do have Master Gardener class signups going on. They can call the office, and we'll talk a little bit more about that next week.
Sure.
Anyway, thanks a lot, Chip. We appreciate our listeners tuning in. Hope they catch us next week right here on the old KOHI Garden Spot.
Christmas time's coming, Christmas time's coming, Christmas time's coming.